Welcome to Transformative Principal. I'm your host, Jethro Jones, and you can follow me on Twitter at Jethro Jones. John Catt Educational supports high-quality teaching and learning by providing publications that are research-based, practical, and focused on the key topics proven essential in today's and tomorrow's schools. The latest John Catt publications include a book whose bold, transformative ideas amaze and infuriate people around the world, according to one reviewer, a title from global leaders in curriculum planning, practice, and retrieval, one book that says stop talking and start doing with regard to teacher well-being, and much more. These books, used by educators of all roles across North America and worldwide, amplify fresh, engaging voices with practical strategies to create transformative change. Learn more in our show notes at jethrojones.com/podcast. Welcome to Transformative Principal. This is episode 406, and I am very excited to have Kate Barker and Kourtney Ferrua on the program today. Kate is a principal at Cherry Park Elementary in Portland, Oregon, and this is her 30th year in education and 17th year as a principal. She works with a very diverse population, which includes over 28 different languages in her community. And Kourtney Ferrua serves as the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment in the McMinnville School District. And prior to working at that district office, she served as the principal at Washer Elementary School for 6 years. In 2019, Kourtney was awarded Oregon Elementary Principal of the Year and recognized as a National Distinguished Principal by NAESP. I'm very excited to have you both here, and welcome to the program, Kate and Kourtney. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jethro. We're excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. And if you are a fan of the podcast, you've heard McMinnville School District before because we've had Amy Fast on the program a couple of times, and she's the principal of McMinnville High School. So we know if we're talking to somebody from McMinnville, it's going to be good. So excited to have that connection here as well. So we're going to be talking about their book that they wrote with Rachel George called PrincipalED, Navigating the Leadership Learning Curve. As I mentioned in School X and on this podcast numerous times, one of the major challenges with being a principal is that you have so many different stakeholders that you are trying to serve. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So Kate, let's start with you. And one of the things that you have mentioned before is this idea of having high expectations, but also having a fun and vibrant culture. And sometimes we think that if you have high expectations, then everything has to be perfect a certain way. And it's a very cold, structured environment that we're all focused on results. Is that really what it's like, Kate? How do you combine both of those?
I think it's an imperative that you marry those two concepts, and that we really strongly believe, all three of us believe, that you can have high expectations and infuse them with that vibrant culture. And so you can set up your systems and your structures for both academics as well as culture, and that will infuse that love and joy for learning and also infuse those high expectations.
So how do we balance that, Kourtney, between having those high expectations and working hard and doing great things and putting our whole selves out there, but then still have fun at the same time? A lot of times we feel like those are not possible to have together, and you're saying that it's necessary, but how do we make that work?
I think it goes back to humans feel good when things are successful, when they feel like they're successful. And that's true for adults, and it's true for children. Working hard towards the goal and feeling that achievement feels great. We talk a lot about loving kids enough and loving your community so much that you have high expectations for them and you won't allow them to fail. I think it's important that we see our mission as future successful humans. So it's not just about that particular grade level or that particular level of whether it's elementary, middle, or high school. We have a loftier goal. It's helping all of the community really actualize what they want to be and who they want to be. It starts by by meeting kids where they're at. Rachel, Kate, and I all work in high poverty districts and schools. It starts with the belief and mindset of adults and really opening that up past the limitations and finding where those obstacles are and finding the way around.
Yeah, and that idea of valuing and recognizing what people want to become and knowing them well enough to know how to help them get there, I think is a really important piece that in our standardized approach to education that's so focused on results and test scores and things that can be measured easily, we forget about that individuality that each person has, their own gifts, their own abilities, their own weaknesses to be able to become the kind of person that they want to be. So when you're setting high expectations, how do you balance those expectations with that? Because when we think of high expectations, we think of get good grades or achieve well on state test scores and things like that. What does high expectations look like as you define it? And Kate, we'll have you start, and then Kourtney can go next.
So I think that it all starts with that common belief that everyone should be growing. So growing as a student, growing as a staff member, growing as the principal, growing as a community. And then it involves the knowing. So how do you know your students are growing? How do you know your staff is growing? Well, you really spend the time getting to know them. So you are looking at data. You are visible in classrooms. You're greeting students at the door. You are instilling strategies within your staff meetings that connect each other so that you know strengths, you know deficits. And then you put together your plan, whether it be academic or social or emotional, to be able to propel people to grow. And I think it's really important that you are taking whomever that person is, and you're starting wherever they're coming in, and then you are making purposeful plans to grow them and to propel them forward.
I would just add to that I think, in our field, we have this tendency towards like a false dichotomy or a pendulum where we think we have to do it either one way or another way. And, 10 years ago, it was all about student achievement, and that was all we did. And now I feel like we are making a similar misstep in thinking that it's all SEL and not academics. The truth is kids need both. And, it's the only year that a student's going to be in third grade, or the only year that a student's going to be in seventh or a freshman in high school. We have an obligation to make sure that they have the academic achievement that they need in order to have all of the doors to the future open to them. But we can do that with deep love. And so, you will hear us talk about standards and common formative assessment and professional collaboration so that teachers are looking at data. But it's not looking at data for data alone. It's looking at data because that data represents the faces of the children that we care so deeply about. And, some of the things that were important to me as I was shifting outcomes at the school that I was working at was reflecting. So we had kids that, on paper, it looked like we were doing all the things, and they had, all of these interventions and all of this stuff. But when we really dug in and did kind of a case study of what that looked like, it was a hot mess. There wasn't a consistency with the focus of our interventions, or they were missing core instruction when they were being pulled out. Those kinds of misalignments can take the best intentions and you start to go sideways with it. It's aligning and knowing your systems and, getting everybody kind of focused in the right direction.
Yeah, I want to go back to that piece, that point you made, Kourtney, about the data. You don't look at data for data's sake, but it's the data that represents the faces of the kids we care about. And you're now in a position as the director of curriculum instruction and assessment, which is different than being a school principal. And you've got way more kids that you're thinking about now than when you were. How do you keep all those kids in your district as individual kids and not lose that picture of them as individual students when you're dealing with district level initiatives and plans?
Yeah, that's a great question. The initiatives that happen at the district level are only as solid as they're implemented by the buildings. And so we really believe on our district in the data team process. So providing a structure in the system for teachers to come together and talk about data. It's important for me to talk about data. It's important for me to look at it, but I don't know the kids. I'm not with them all day. And so it's important for the teachers to have that structure to be able to look at it. And we have, so some of the things that we've done are create common formative assessments throughout our district. So if I'm a student in 6th grade ELA, I have the same assessment, and we can look at it across town, at how students are doing, really focusing on that replication of success. Teaching is one of those kind of funky positions where we hang out a lot with our colleagues, but we never actually see them do the work because we're all doing the work at the same time. And so another thing that I really am passionate about is peer observation. You mentioned Amy Fast before, and Amy and I started together as instructional coaches in the district. And it was phenomenal, the culture that we built with, a grant opportunity that we had at the time, but getting teachers to see each other practice and learn from one another, like fostering that kind of grassroots movement where your entire structure is a learning structure, of just replicating the success of one another.
Yeah, I think it'd be beneficial to maybe do another podcast with you, Kourtney, about that data team and how to create that and implement it so that we can really make a difference for our kids. And that's something I'd like to do a deep dive in and really go through the process to talk about that. So if you're interested, I'd love to schedule something else with you and go through that, because I think that would be powerful. I do want to change gears just a little bit, because I think one of the things we don't talk about a lot in education, especially publicly, is how difficult this work is as you're dealing with different personalities and different feelings and experiences. And it's just, there can be some really big landmines that you can step on and really destroy a lot of things. I mean, we started talking about a fun, vibrant culture with high expectations, and those high expectations lead to stress, burnout, difficult conversations, people losing their tempers and their professionalism at different times. So let's talk a little bit about some of those difficult things that we never talk about in education, because it's really important for us to talk about those, because it's not good to be blindsided when you go in. So Kate, let's start with you again and talk about how to bring up a challenging situation to someone in a way that you maintain the high expectations, but also still keep the relationship, because once there's confrontation, that relationship can go out the door. During COVID, every teacher is a new teacher. That's why innovative school leaders are turning to TeachFX, whose professional learning platform doubles student engagement online or in person. To learn more about TeachFX and get a special offer, visit teachfx.com/transformative principal.
And I'm so glad that you mentioned relationship, because we feel like that should be at the heart of everything that we do. Do you have a relationship with that staff member or the parent or the student to be able to have the really honest, hard conversation? In fact, in PrincipalED, we have a whole chapter on how to have hard conversations. And I think it starts with a relationship, but it's so important for leaders to make sure that there aren't any surprises. So a part of the art of being a leader is being able to communicate clearly and often about what are your expectations. And then just like anything, just like with our students, it's important to follow up with those expectations and to reinforce those expectations, to appreciate what you expect. And one of the phrases that I use is, to expect what you inspect, or inspect what you expect. It's back to, it's being visible. It is writing a note and leaving it in a mailbox for a teacher that has done something that follows your expectations. It's when someone's not following the expectations, not necessarily immediately assuming that they're doing it with ill intent, but to then ask the questions. Do they understand the expectation? Do they know how to implement that expectation, and really come from it from a place of learning and coaching and making sure that they have the model that you're constantly modeling in your staff meetings or in your communication, in your interactions, and then following up with that appreciation and reinforcement.
And, modeling is another thing that, I got a little story time here. So in one district, it was the expectation that principals go to all the professional development with the teachers, which is good on the part of modeling what people should be doing. But then it was not good in that all of the principal's time, especially during in-service time, was spent in not doing any other work, but attending sessions purely for the sake of modeling. And so it wasn't actually beneficial because we were focused so much on modeling. We weren't focused on doing our own work, which meant that the principals then afterward would, have to stay late at school for hours to be prepared for the next day or whatever else needed to happen, whatever other things the school district had in mind for us. And modeling was all well and good at first, but then we quickly realized that we were just basically wasting time. We didn't need the instruction on specific teaching strategies like our teachers did, because we weren't going to be implementing those, and we would still need to coach, but it didn't fall to us to be like in the classroom next to the teacher, making sure that they were doing this right. And that would just become too much micromanaging. Help me understand how to have that balance so that there's some modeling, but that there's not so much that we're wasting our time. Where am I wrong on that, or am I?
Well, I think that instructional leadership is really important. And in being able to lead other educators, we need to never lose that heart of education ourselves. In our district, we do a lot of in-house professional development where we send a crew to become, the experts in something, and then they come back and teach it to a larger audience. And we've done that with research-based strategies. We've done that with student management and social emotional, and it's been really effective. I think, one of the things that drives me crazy in education is that tendency to look for the new bright thing, or the answer to everything is this new something. And I think right now we're so blessed in education to live in a time where we have great data. And, with John Hattie's work and Doug Reeves' work, other people who have done this deep dive into the research, we know best practices. And I think, to go deep with a few things, and as a building leader, you're going to be aware of what it is. And then the teams that are kind of specializing in those areas go much deeper by focusing on some core initiatives or some core strategies that everyone has a common language around. Then it's not like you're changing topics all the time. It becomes, these are the pillars that we believe in. And every year we're just going to enhance and go deeper with them.
Yeah, that's great. And Kate, you were going to say something too. Go ahead.
Well, I think it just goes back to strength-based leadership and really capitalizing on the people that are within your realm. And it is for example, when we're all about data team meetings as well, and the leaders have a pre-meeting in our school that talk about who should say what to whom, and really capitalize on somebody maybe have a strength in sharing the data in chunks that might make the most sense. Somebody else may be an expert, let's say, in K2 and sharing strategies. And that, I think, back to your question about, is it worth having the principal come to all the professional learning? I think that sometimes yes and sometimes no. And that can you choose people that are on your team to be the ones that share that information and bring it back to the staff? There's a story, we infused lesson study, which is a strategy that I found just a huge shift in our community. And it was all about micro planning as a team. And when you do that together, there's one instructor. And because I was just learning it, I said, would you be okay if I would be the instructor? And that you can teach me about decomposing numbers. So the team taught me, and then I had to implement it. And what it showed was that I was willing to get in the trench with them. They saw me cry. They saw me frustrated. They saw me. So it really brought us closer together. And it gave me an enormous amount of respect for my team and the work that they were doing with our students, and how difficult it is to differentiate math. And so I think that there is value in learning alongside of your staff. But the most important thing is, as the principal or as the curriculum director, you don't always have to be the one leading the professional development. But it is important that you know what your staff is doing so that you can advocate and support.
Yeah, so 2 examples on this. One, I was in a district where the principal attended all the PLC meetings, and it felt basically like the principal was there to make sure that the teachers were doing their jobs, which set up an adversarial confrontational relationship from the word go. And in another district, the principal attended all the PLC meetings, but the purpose of the principal being there was to make sure the teachers had adequate resources. So it wasn't so that the principal could say, well, you're not doing it right, and that's not the approach that was taken. It was really to ensure that the people had what they need to do their work. And you talked about this idea of strength-based leadership, that in the district I was talking about where we had to go to the professional development, it was basically, we had a complaint 7 years ago about the principals not being at the professional development. And so teachers started not going themselves because there was no quote unquote accountability. And all that did was just create this vicious cycle of trying to force people to do the right thing. And that's not at all what we're trying to do. We want to inspire them to do the right thing by having a good, fun, vibrant culture with high expectations, and then provide that accountability later when people aren't doing what they should be doing by, as you mentioned, inspecting what you expect. And when you have that balance set up appropriately, then it empowers people. When you have that set up inappropriately, then it just makes people frustrated and they don't want to do it. And so being able to navigate that and find the balance, I think is really important. And I know Principal gets into that so that people can use that as a guidepost to help them make those decisions. Anything else you want to add there, Kourtney?
I think that what you're hitting on, Jethro, is so important. Without a clearly articulated why and a worthy purpose, any mandate that's put into place will fall flat. So if data is the mandate, data without a worthy purpose or an articulated why feels like micromanagement, right? But when you are articulating your why, which is so important as a leader, and Kate, Rachel, and I have talked about having your elevator speech that explains why you chose this profession and why you feel compelled to lead a community is such an important thing, because we often make the mistake of assuming that people know why we're in this work, or, oh, we gave it and, we talked about it in a speech, but not everybody was there. And, your community is like a stream. You never step into the same stream twice. So you kind of have to be continually putting your why out there. When I was the principal at Washer, one of the strategies that I used to kind of maintain that focus on student learning and high expectations was, every day I'm sending an email about who's absent from the building. And so in addition to doing that task, I would put in kind of my mantra for the work, and then also, something about being an instructional leader or best practice or something, like a link to a podcast or an article or something that just keeps it front and center. That's what we're doing always. And there's so much noise in the work. And especially now with, the pandemic, we're focusing on measuring the distance between a seat and another seat and how many, layers of masks we have on and all of these things that are really important. But it can take our focus away from the instruction part and from the articulating our true purpose for this work.
Yeah, that's so valuable. When you have those things in place, many other things go away. And I love how Kourtney, you used it as something where every day they would get a refresher on your mandate for why you're in education. And I think that is truly valuable. If you're not saying it enough that you're getting sick of saying it, then you're certainly not close to saying it enough. And people need to be sick of hearing it from you before they will internalize that as well. And that's so important. It's a little thing, but it's vital for that to continue. In closing today, want to remind everybody to get your book, Principled, Navigating the Leadership Learning Curve, and make sure you check that out. And the final question is, what is one thing that a principal can do this week to be a transformative principal? And we'll start with you, Kourtney, and then Kate will have the last word.
Awesome. So I think that the gift that a principal can give themselves this week is to pause and reflect. I feel like, we've all been on a giant marathon run, and you can't pour from an empty cup. You really need to take care of yourself and embody some self-care. Know that you're not alone in this work, and there's a network of people here that are willing and excited to support you.
I would just echo what Kourtney mentioned and just add, how can you show that you love your community? And loving them with acts of appreciation, loving them to have those high expectations, loving them to support them with their needs. And that could be coaching them on a specific instructional strategy. And it also could be waltzing into their room and saying, it's time to go home, do something kind for yourself. It can be loving them to be the biggest cheerleader and the biggest advocate. And so love can come in many, many different ways, but the most important thing is that our communities do know that we love and care about them.
Very good. How do people get in touch with you and learn more from you? Kourtney and then Kate.
So I'm on Twitter at Kourtney Ferrua, and it's Kourtney with a K. And then we also have a website, principal.org, that has links to our book study and different resources for our work there.
You can reach me at Kate_S_Barker. And we'd love to hear from you because you are not alone in this work.
All right. And I will have links to their Twitter handles and their website at jethrojones.com/podcast/episode 406. So once again, Kourtney and Kate, thank you so much for being here, talking about your book, Principled. And I appreciate your time, your expertise, and thank you for sharing that with my audience.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, middle school principals, what if I told you that all your teachers had to do to teach your students really valuable social and emotional competencies was just press play? In Control SEL is a fully automated video curriculum that teachers and students absolutely love. And that's because it's easy, and it looks just like a Netflix or a YouTube show. So all you have to do to hear about how it can completely transform your school is schedule your call. Tell us Jethro sent you and you'll get 20% off if you feel like it's a good fit. So go now to www.incontrolsel.com/strategy call to schedule your call today. The link will be in the show notes.